Christina Weber here. I wanted to give you a little recap on my experience during the Kayak Bass Series first event in Astor, Florida. I fished approximately 6 pre-fishing days, not including a weekend I went out prior to the week of the tournament, and I definitely thought that would give me enough time to figure things out. Definitely gave me enough time to paddle my happy butt around every square inch of the lake and the river and surrounding lakes. But I definitely didn't figure out how to catch the big ones. I ended up launching at a bunch of different areas. I fished a bunch of different water. I did a lot of different things. And that was my whole tactic to it, was just to try to do a bunch of different things and just to figure out a pattern. I figured once I had a pattern, then I can try to focus on finding some larger fish. So everywhere I fished, I was finding fish, but nothing was big. I ended up launching in a certain area on Wednesday, and it was definitely my best day on the water. More because I just was able to catch 5 fish before 10 o'clock. I figured if I can target and get my limit of 3 fish and then focus on getting some bigger fish, I'll have a good opportunity in this. So that was my whole mindset. When I fished a few other places that I knew there must be some bigger fish and I wasn't catching them, that's when I made my decision to fish where I fished on Saturday. So where did I end up fishing on Saturday? I ended up launching right in the river. Basically, like the most popular place you'd probably think that anybody would just launch their boat and go to fish. I tried to avoid this area for a very long time, but when I drove by and I saw the wind direction and that it had there's like protection here, and I was able to really focus on like quality casts instead of fighting the wind in the lake and not make those quality casts that I needed to. That's what kind of pushed me to give it a shot. So on Wednesday I gave it a shot. I did okay. I wasn't super stoked about it, but I was stoked that I knew I could catch a limit. And that was important to me, that I could at least catch a limit. So I launched at the Pearl Street boat ramp, which is the letter I on the boundaries map that the KBS has posted on their website. You can find it on there in the address if you would like. This was more of a residential area. I fished a lot of docks and seawalls, things of that such. I just knew I could find fish there. So I went and I started off the morning throwing plastics, more so Cincos and some frogs, just to kind of see and feel out the area. I knew there was some vegetation there, and Cincos are always very popular in Florida. So one of my favorite baits because it works. I had been beating these fish with plastics for the last 4 days, so I wanted to try something different. I ended up throwing on one of my favorite hard baits by BioVex. It's the BioVex Amp Shallow Crank, which is this guy right here. Yes, I actually switched these hooks out. But this is the little guy. He's one of my favorites this time of year. It's just a little square bill that I throw around, and I figured I'm going to try something different, and I really like this bait, so I'm going to give it a shot. Ever since I tied this on, I caught all of my fish on this, and everywhere else I went, I kept this tied on, and I eventually was catching all of my fish on this everywhere else that I was pre-fishing in. I was catching fish on Cincos, but this definitely, I had my confidence in this, and I knew I was going to be able to catch fish on it. So I kept this tied on. This is what I threw, and because I was fishing docks and seawalls, I went through quite a few of these baits. As you can tell, I was pretty rough on them, but in order to catch fish sometimes you really need to throw them up against some walls, and I wasn't getting any bites unless it was landing right up against the wall. You have that strike zone if you miss even this much of your strike zone, you might as well have not even made the cast sometimes. That's just how I look at it, and that's basically why I fished this area. I knew that what direction the wind was going to be blowing in. I knew I needed to focus in on my quality casts, and I had found fish there previously, so that's why I stuck in that area. I didn't necessarily just go and hit every dock either. There's a lot of docks that I missed. I really focused on the mouths of these channels. Some of them were lined with lily pads, some of them weren't, but each one of them I was catching fish in, and it wasn't always on the first cast. I really had to work for these things. I'd work both sides of the point, I'd work the middle of it, and I'd work again through, you know, the middle and a little bit inside. But I wasn't catching fish inside of these canals, only in the mouths of them, and then outside in the main river. So that was how I caught my fish. So out of the baits I was throwing this week, the Fishing Physics grub and shad were two of them. With Fishing Physics, all their baits already come soaked in a attractant. I had with me the minnow and earthworm flavors. Yum. No, I did not try them. And I've had a bunch of different colors. But I was also throwing Cincos and frogs and the spinner baits, of course. I use the grubs as trailers on my spinner baits. I threw a bunch of gamblers. I was flipping why nots and ugly otters. I basically was throwing a lot of like black and blue. But I also had some lighter colors. I was throwing like some watermelons, and I did throw some white frogs, but that was really it. I was having better luck on the darker colors. The water is really dark there, and especially with the wind, depending on what side you were fishing on, it was muddier than the other one, and so it was a lot of stained water. So darker colors were definitely the direction to go. And that's that. If you have any additional questions, please give me a shout and I'll be sure to talk to you about them. Thanks to everybody who's involved with the KBS. Y'all rock. I know you put in a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and it definitely showed. It was a really great event, and I'm stoked to be a part of it, and I'm super excited to see everybody in Texas on Sam Rayburn.